This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming and joining us this evening for the learning of Teres Hashem Be'ezras Hashem Yisbach. As always, we begin B'Shus Gemara D'Asra, Harav Landau, with continued appreciation to all of you for coming. Shir got delayed because there was some kind of a closure on Ocean Parkway. I had to go around it. Well, thank you for waiting. And tonight's shir is dedicated to my Yedid Nefesh, Rabbi Dr. Yitzhak Kurtzer, for all that he does. He helps me with my wife's medical advice, together with her oncologist, Dr. Hirschfeld. But Rabbi Dr. Yitzhak Kurtzer, who's been my friend for many years, helps me in many ways, and we're very grateful. A special reason why I'm dedicating the shir to him tonight, and his wife Rachel, because today we spoke on the phone like we usually do, and he told me a word from the Chassam Sofer, which I'm going to start off with, which was a spark plug to make me realize many things about this thought, and I think you'll be excited about it as much as I am. I had a lot of ideas about this, which reveals a lot of new insights into Yaakov Avinu. We learn with the tefillah that those who have been touched by the dreaded machla, known as Yana Machla, other related diseases, should have a refuah shalema b'sech shachar Yisrael. All of us and our loved ones should always be healthy. And we learn with the tefillah that all those that are waiting their shidduch should find their shidduch quickly and easily. All those that are waiting children should be blessed with zarachaya v'kayama, healthy mommy, healthy baby. Those we should have parnasa b'revach v'chavod and langer gesunte zisa shalom bayis. I also like to make a shout out to those that enjoy watching things on TorahAnytime.com. I know they have yet a little bit more time left on their Match It videothon that they have going on. So if you benefit from TorahAnytime.com, you should know it's expensive to run. They have full-time people in their employ, and therefore we ask you to donate. At the end of Vayigash, last week's parsha, it ends off, Vayechi we took hold of Mitzrayim, Vayifru, Vayirbu ma'id, we were fruitful, we multiplied very much, and then it starts off, Vayechi Yaakov. So the last word in the parasha is ma'id, and the first word in this parasha is Vayechi Yaakov. So the Chassam Sofer says as follows. It says in Chazal, Shufrei de Yaakov, the beauty of Yaakov, is me'ein Shufrei de Adam Arisha, is like akin to the beauty of Adam. So Chassam Sofer says this is not pageant information. The Yaakov was handsome like Adam Arisha. Rather, it means that Yaakov was a Gilgal of Adam Arisha. And he says that, therefore we find that when Yaakov came down to Mitzrayim, and Paro asked him how old he was, he said, Ma'at v'ram, few and bad, Yemei Shnei Chayim. Now, how old was Yaakov at that point? Yaakov at that point was 130, because he lived in Mitzrayim 17 years, and he passed away at 147. So he was 130. So the Chassam Sofer points out, those are the 130 years that Adam Arishan separated from Chava. It says he was Piresh Me'ishtoi 130 years because of the sin of the Eitz Hadas. And what happened between him and Chava when Chava gave him the forbidden fruit. So therefore, the Ma'at V'roim Shnei Chayei of Yaakov, 130 years, matched 130 years of Ra of Adam Arishan that he separated from his wife. And I wanted to add that that's Pshat Ro'im, because without a wife is Ra. Right? It says, what's good? Matzah Isha Matzah Toiv. Loi Toiv Eyois Adam Levadi. Loi Toiv. If it's not good, it's bad. So therefore, the 130 alludes to the 130 years of Royim that Adam Arishan had, Yaakov being a Gilgal of Adam, away from his wife. And I believe that perhaps when Yaakov Avinu said to Paro, Ma'at V'roim, and we know how severely Yaakov was criticized and lost years of his life because he said Roim, but of course it's questionable. What do you mean Ma'at? 130 years, even in those days, wasn't Ma'at. I understand Roim. The problems with Esav, the problems with Lavan, the problems with Dinah, the problems with Yosef. We understand what Roim is, but what's Ma'at? So the Ramban is troubled by the Ma'at a lot, and we know there's a famous Medrash. The Ramban doesn't bring down the Medrash. The Ramban simply says that Paro was prompted. You usually don't ask a personal question to someone you just meet. How old are you? But Paro was prompted because Yaakov looked like a very old man. He was very aged. Now there's a Medrash, Ramban doesn't bring it up, but it's a famous Medrash, that Og was standing next to Paro, and Og said, that's not Yaakov, that's Avram. That's what he said. Look how old he is. That's Abraham. So Paro asked him, are you Abraham? So he said, no, I'm a grandson. Why do I look so Matt? I only lived relative to you thinking that I'm Avram. No, Matt, I'm not that old. But I age because of Roy. But now, in light of this understanding that Ra means that in the case of Adam, that he separated from his wife for 130 years, that's what Ra is, without his wife. Now we can understand that Yaakov was alluding to the loss of his two main wives. The Royim is the fact that he lost his wives, Rachel and Leah. And Ma'at, he only had them for a few years. He had Rachel passed away at 36. Rachel passed away at 36. And Leah passed away at 45. So Royim, I was without wife, and Ma'at, I only had them for a few years. Okay. So, therefore, says the Chassam Sofer with such a drush, he says that's why the parsha ends off with the word Ma'id. What's Ma'id? Oisi is Adam. So Ma'id is Adam and Vayechi Yaakov. Right? So it's alluding to the fact that Adam was, Yaakov was a Gilgal of Adam, and Vayechi Yaakov, Yaakov's main life was the 17 years that he had in Mitzrayim. Those were trouble-free years. Esav wasn't pursuing him, Lavan wasn't pursuing him. He had all his children, he had Dinah. Right? So that's the connection. Ma'od is Adam, and then Vayechi Yaakov, to show that Yaakov was a Gilgal of Adam. As an aside, I mentioned this many times already, but it's kedai to review it. There's a famous gematria in the Rishonim that Vayechi is begematria. Let's figure out the gematria of Vayechi. Vav is 6, Yud is 10, is 16, Ches is 8, is 24, and Yud is 10, is 34. The years that Yaakov really lived without trouble is the 17 years that he was with Yosef before he was sold, and the 17 years down in Mitzrayim. That's the 34 years. So Vayechi Yaakov, Vayechi is begematria 34 because the years of Yosef were the 17 years that he lived in with Yosef before Yosef was sold, and the 17 years in Mitzrayim. Now, I always asked a very big kasha on this, and that is, what about the 14 years in Shem V'Ever? 14 years in Shem V'Ever should have been Mamish Gan Eden auf dem Welt. He didn't sleep. He was orangutan and learning. It's like people say, I always remember my yeshiva days. I was orangutan and learning, no problems, no worries. Yaakov had no worries. He was in yeshiva. Why don't we count those 14 years? And the answer is because he wasn't married. And that's not chayim. That's not Chaim. Full Chaim is only with a partner. So therefore, since he wasn't married, that wasn't counted. The 17 years before Yosef was sold, and the 17 years down in Mitzrayim, when he was still married to Bilhah would outlive him, right? Those were his Ikar years. So now that it was pointed out to me that Yaakov was a Gilgal of Adam, so we understand that the purpose of a Gilgal is to make a tikkun, to make a correction. And now we watch in amazement. Because what happened by Adam? His son Cain got jealous of Hevel and killed him. And that's exactly what happened with Yaakov. Yaakov's sons got jealous with Yosef. They tried to kill him. They put him in a pit of snakes and scorpions. And even when they weren't successful in killing him, right? But they sold him into slavery. They stripped him of all his wealth. They took away everything. He became a pauper. And Ani Chashav Kameis. But there was a tikkun. Because at the end, Yaakov got all his boys together. And they made up with each other. So there was a tikkun, an improvement on what happened from Adam, whose son murdered his other son with jealousy. Here, the brothers who were jealous because of the Ksainas Basim eventually made up. So we see a tikkun. If we look carefully, we'll see a frightening aspect of similarity. By Adam, he died because of his wife. Right? His wife gave him the forbidden fruit, whatever it was, a grape, an esrog, wheat, whatever it was. Probably wasn't an apple, but whatever it was. So he died because of his wife. And what happened by Yaakov? His wife died because of him. Right? Because he said, if you find your truffle by somebody that someone shouldn't live, and Rachel died because of that. We find that Adam was cursed because of his sin. B'zeyes apecha toichal lechem. With hardship, you're going to have to eat bread. And which of the Avos had to work with hardship? Yaakov, who slaved 20 years under the cruel thumb of Lavan. And then he was forced to go down for bread and go into exile, go down to Mitzrayim, lishbar ochel, in order to buy bread. But my friend, Dr. Kurtzer, pointed out to me something else, which I never heard. The Arizal says that Rabbeinu HaKadosh was a Gilgal of Yaakov. And the Arizal says, in his fascinating way, where would we be without the Arizal? The Arizal says that that's why he's called Reb Yehuda HaNasi. HaNasi stands for Hu Nishmas Yaakov Avinu. Hu Nishama Shel Yaakov Avinu. That's what HaNasi stands for. Hu Neshama Shel Yaakov Avinu. It's an Arizal. And they point out that that's why it says in Pirkei Avos, Rabbi Omer Eizer Derech Sheyavu Loi Ha'adam. What's the way a person should choose? Kol Shi Tiferes Loiseh. And Yaakov was the man of Tiferes, right? Of all the different, this Chesed, this Yaakov is Tiferes. That's why Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi used Kol Shi Tiferes Loiseh. So I told my friend, well, you don't realize it. So now we're saying that Rebbe was a Gilgal of Yaakov, Yaakov was a Gilgal of Adam. That's why the Mishnah says, Eizo derech sheyavu lo ha'adam. He mentions Adam there too. Eizo derech sheyavu lo ha'adam, kol shi teferes. So you have Adam, You have Yaakov, who's Tferes, and you have now Rebbe. Rebbe is also known as Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Not many people are known as Kadosh, but that's Yaakov. Kedoshenu Kedosh Yaakov. But if you look more, you'll see more things. You just have to open your eyes. It's amazing. Like I said, it opened a floodgate for me today. Because there's a famous Gemara that Rebbe was one of the few people that after he died, he came back every Friday night and made Kiddush for his wife. Now, if you make Kiddush for your wife, you can't be dead. No, you can't be dead. You can't be ghost. Because Meisim Chavshim and Amitzis, if you're Chavshim and Amitzis, you can't be Mitzi. Can't be Mitzi somebody if you're dead. So that means Rebbe loy meis. And that's what we say about Yaakov. Yaakov Avinu loy meis. You even will find, what's the tikkun of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi to Yaakov? One of the few tightness against Yaakov Avinu is he didn't allow Dinah to marry Yaakov. He locked her in a box. He didn't allow Dinah to marry Esav. Just checking if you're listening. Right? He didn't allow Dinah to marry Esav. And I spoke about it many times. That Yaakov locked the box that she couldn't get out. Not that she couldn't get in. She couldn't get out. She wanted to try. You have to realize the power of Dinah. The power of Dinah, that a whole city mauled themselves. She had a power over men. Shem could have had any girl in town. So she had a power. She wanted to use it, so Yaakov didn't allow her. Well, like some say, he was right for stopping, but he shouldn't have pounded in the nail with such a geschmack. However you learn, that was a taina. And therefore we find an unbelievable thing that Rebbe was Mekarev, a descendant of Esav, Antoninus. Such an odd thing that the great Gadol Ador was friendly with a descendant of Esav. But that's the tikkun. You watch these things in such amazement. It's such amazement. Even the fact that it says that after, on his deathbed, he told his children to be mechabed their mother. And we're taught that you don't have to tell tzaddikim to be mechabed their mother. It's the fifth commandment. But it was a stepmother. It was a stepmother. And then afterwards, that was the same thing with Yaakov. He passed away, and the Shvatim were left with the stepmother. Most of the Shvatim were left with the stepmother, Bilhah. Bilhah outlived Yaakov. I'll point out one more thing, although this is a developing theme. I just knew about it today. I'm sure we could develop many more things. This is just itsy bitsy Weiss talking. I'm sure everybody could think about it and they'll see more things. And we have to know. We have to know what's right and what's wrong. But find an interesting thing. That Adam Arishan was told that, actually a snake was told, Hu yeshuf charosh, he will step on your head. V'ata teshufenu okay, you will bruise him in the heel. You think it's coincidental that the Gilgal was said about him, Yodo yoichezes ba'kei Esav? That Esav's heel tried to crush Yaakov to smithereens? If Hashem didn't make a miracle that he was able to hold the heel? Heel by Adam? Heel by Yaakov? It's a lot to think about. Now we're going to move into another subject, no less incredible. I'm going to be hearing a lot of incredible things tonight. It's worth the price of admission tonight. Vayemer leYosef, hinei avicha chole. They told Yosef, your father is ill. So the Psikta says they had to tell him, Otherwise, he wouldn't have known. Because the entire 17 years that Yosef was together with Yaakov in Mitzrayim, he never allowed himself to be alone with Yaakov, because he didn't want Yaakov to say, so tell me, Yosef, what happened? I mean, they brought me the cloak, it was full of blood, and they told me that, animals attacked you. So how did you get away? What happened? And you don't lie to Yaakov. Titein emes liYaakov. And he knew that if he would tell them the truth, there's a chance that Yaakov would curse them. And you don't survive a curse. I mean, even his mother was cursed unwittingly. Yaakov didn't know she took the trafim. And he said, and she died. So imagine if he would curse them intentionally. So he couldn't take the risk. So although he loved his father, there's a pasuk that says ki. It's a powerful, it's a poetic pasuk. Ki oza kemoves ava. Strong like death is love. That's the love between Yosef and Yaakov. Although they had such a love, and he was away from him for 22 years, he protected the Shvatim by not being alone with his father. But I want to point out another element. It wasn't just that Yosef made sure not to be with his father. Yaakov equally never asked to see Yosef. I would have to believe that if Yaakov summoned Yosef, come, I want to have tea with you. It wasn't in London. I don't know if it would be tea or a latte or a beer. I don't know. Probably not a beer. Right? He says, come, I want to talk a little bit, reminisce, catch up. Yosef would have had to go. He wouldn't say no to his father. So Yaakov never asked. Yaakov never asked. It's a wondrous thing. So we always learn this psikta as saying that Yosef did it because he was worried about the brothers. But I want to add a caveat here, which I consider an extremely important which I think is an extremely important caveat. And that is, Yosef was trying to repent. We know if a person sins, that part of the atonement process is not just charata, but it's aziva sachet. So Yosef sinned. He realized after many years, he had many years in a dungeon to think about it. Vayove Yosef es dibosam roa elaviyah. He brought evil tidings. So now he wanted to make sure he doesn't repeat it and say more evil tidings. They're true, but that doesn't stop it from being lashon hara. The first things that he said were also true, and look what happened with that. So therefore, it's not just he was concerned about the brothers, but this was his tshuva's process. So he made sure not to be with his father, because then again he would have to bring a dibara again about the brothers. Now perhaps I'd like to suggest, and this is really controversial, we went through this already, but now we have extra knowledge over here. If you remember, I told you twice, I mentioned this. The first time, I got a really, really, really strong letter from a Talmud Chacham. There's a Medrash Rabbeinu HaKadosh. The Medrash Rabbeinu HaKadosh says that Yosef sinned by saying a dibara, Yaakov sinned by listening to it. And the Medrash Rabbeinu HaKadosh asks, who sinned more, Yosef or Yaakov? And the Medrash says Yaakov, because while Yosef was exiled from his family for 22 years, Yaakov was bereft of the Shechina for 22 years. So that's what it says, Vatchi Ruach Yaakov Avim, the Shechina came back. So for 22 years he was without the Shechina. That's a bigger punishment. So I told you, and I make sure to say it now, that although this is a Medrash Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the Chavetz Chaim, the Rashka Bahag, Rosh Kol B'nei HaGoyla, the Pesach Hador of his time, Zechat Tzaddik Kodesh Baruch, Susi Yagan Aleinu says it can't be that there's such a Medrash. Nowhere does it mention Yaakov sinned. Can't be that the Bechir Sheba Avos, whose Demus is Chokuk Al Kisa HaKavod, should be Mekabel Lashon Hara. Can't be. It says it's an invention. It's not true. Many people quote it though. I saw the Medrash inside. I believe I saw that. I'm not sure. I saw it brought down for sure. And now with our insight that Rabbeinu HaKadosh was a Gilgal of Yaakov and coming to be Mesakin, it would make sense that he would be the expert in it. If it's true that Yaakov also was guilty of this minuscule sin, that's why he also didn't invite Yosef to come to him. Because he was also being Mesakin, not listening to Lashon Hara. Now the Sefer Oitzois Pninei HaTorah talks about the koiches hanefesh needed not to say something. He tells a story that Rabbi Yisachar Dov, the famous Belzer Rebbe, Rabbi Yisachar Dov, Zech Tzaddik Levracha Zchus Yagan Aleinu, had a minig that every week he met with his children to discuss Torah. My son, who's a Rebbe in Darche, tells me Rabbi Bender has a minig with his children, maybe his grandchildren also, to meet them also once a week. It's a beautiful minig. Yeah, a minig, so, but in the case of Yisachar Dov, these were all great men, and he met them, and one of the people that came, of course, was Rabbi Arla, the next Rebbe, Rabbi Aaron. And when he met, everybody would talk and he would never say anything. And everybody would wonder, is a gadol b'Torah? He never said anything. He sat, he listened, he nodded his head, but he never said anything. One day, he started participating and saying about the chidushim and wonderful terutzim. And Rabbi Yisachar Dov says, "My hi, what happens?" So later he said to his father, "You know, our stepmom listens in the kitchen. And I know she gets hana if it's only her children that's talking up. So therefore I never wanted to talk up. I know she gets hana. Her children should shine. This week she went away on a trip, so that's why I participated." Amazing. Koiches hanefesh of a person for a stepmother. In Yiddishkeit, there's a different attitude than the wicked stepmother. So I want to segue with this to another inyan, which is also a great inyan, which is somewhat related. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'hakol niyeh b'dvaro. We know that the Shvatim asked Yosef for mechila. V'ata, and now, Sana lepesha avdei Elokei avicha. Please forgive the sin of the servants of the God of your father. Vayef Yosef b'dabra me'elav. And Yosef cried. So, it sounds like, it says Vayenochem, he comforted them, and he spoke to their hearts. So it sounds like Yosef was meichel them. But there's a big problem. If Yosef was meichel them, so then why it says that we ended up being slaves in Egypt because we sold Yosef as a slave. But if Yosef was Michael, why did we have to be sold as slaves? Why did the Asara Haruge Malchus, the 10 martyrs, amongst them Rabbi Akiva, why did they have to die? Ben Ishchai says the 10 sons of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai died because of the sin of Mechiras Yosef. Others say that the Gezeirah of Haman was also because of the sin of Mechiras Yosef. But if Yosef was Michael, then why did all these things have to happen? So here we have the famous Rabbeinu Bachya. Rabbeinu Bachya says that Yosef was never Michael. It says, Vayinochem, he comforted them. Don't worry, I'm not going to take, now that father's not here, I'm not going to take revenge. He spoke to their hearts, but he never said, I'm Michael. And Rav Chaim Pelagi, the great prolific Svardi Chacham, Rav Chaim Pelagi, wrote more Svardim than most people ever learned. Rav Chaim Pelagi says, you see from this, it's not enough for people to make up. They have to say, Mochalach, I forgive you. It's not enough to say, well, we'll let bygones be bygones. We won't go there. It's not enough. You have to say, Mochalach. Yosef never said Mochalach. That's Rav Chaim Pelagi, that's Rabbeinu Bachya. But it's a Sefer Chassidim, 14th century Sefer Chassidim, says Beferish not that way. Beferish. Sefer Chassidim writes, and I'll quote, V'chein b'nei Yaakov, k'shechatu l'Yosef, machal lahem. It was machal lahem. So therefore, it begs the question, if he was Michael then, it was Michael. So then, why did all the things happen? Chidah asked the Kasha. The Chidah says that Gezeirah Haman came from Mechiras Yosef. Asar Arugei Malchus, Ben Ishchai, that the 10 sons of Haman, being sold into slavery in Egypt. Why did all of these things happen? So the Chidah gives his own answer. The Chidah says there was 2 things that Yosef did. There was 2 things the brothers did. They sinned against Yosef, but they also made a Chilul Hashem. The Chidah says it got out. How did Yosef? They did a search. How did Yosef come down to Mitzrayim? Why was he away for his family all these years? How did he get to be a slave in the house of Potiphar? And with enough Pinkerton work, they unearthed that the brothers sold him. It was a big Chilul Hashem. And the ensuing punishment through the Dairis was because of the Chilul Hashem. That's the way the Chidah answers. They bring down another answer from Rab Mordechai Zuckerman. They say that Rab Mordechai Zuckerman says that the punishment was for the bittul Torah that they caused. Yosef was learning with Yaakov, Kol ma shelamad b'shem ve'ever masalai. And all that bittul Torah of Yosef being stripped away from his family, from the yeshiva, for that the punishment ensued through the Dairos. I want to give my own answer. Little itty bitty me. I want to suggest that it's not only Yosef that was over here hurt. Yaakov was hurt. They hurt their father. For 22 years, Yaakov mourned his son. And he was not at peace. He was bereft of the Shekhinah. Even if Yosef forgave them, we don't find Yaakov forgave them. First of all, Yaakov, according to some Rishonim, never knew. That's why Yosef was away from him all the time. It's a big machlokes Rishonim if Yaakov knew. So if Yaakov didn't know, he was never Michael. Could be Michael. So they never got Mechila for hurting Yaakov. And even if he did know, we didn't see that he was Moichel Adarab, he cursed them. B'ritzaynam ikru sharash, he says. You tried to uproot Yosef was a shar, b'char shar hadalai. Or apam kiyaz. V'evrosam ki kashasa. We never found that he was Moichel. And because of that, there was all hell to pay throughout the generations. Being slaves for 117 years. Asara Harugay Malchus. Mises. It's not easy to cause pain to a Yaakov Avinu, the Bechir Shem Avos. Okay, fasten your seatbelts. You're in for a ride. So you always know that in this year for decades, with the help of Hashem, only with the help of Hashem, I've always talked to you about the wonder of names. The famous Gemara that tells us, Shema Garim, a name foretells one's destiny. There's a remarkable example of this in this week's parsha. Remarkable. Ruvain, it's a very simple gematria, Ruvain. Ruvain, Reish Aleph Vav Vez Nun, is gematria 259. Check it out. Reish is 200, Aleph is 1, Vav is 6, that's 7, Vez is 2, that's 9, and Nun is 50. 259. It's exactly gematria Loi Bechar. He was not to be the Bechar. Now, if that's not a sparkling example of Shmo Gorim, that a name here is Ruvain, Reish Esaini, Bechariat, he was not destined to get the Bechar. It's in the name, Shmo Gorim. As is the case, not over there, please, not over there. As is the case, as is the case of a name like Yosef, we had Osaf Elikimes Karposi. Now we all know that refers to the fact that people were saying about Rachel that she was the wife for beauty, not the wife to be marred for pregnancy. And or as she said, now that I have a son, they don't blame me for everything that happens in the house, because now they'll say Yosef did it. But you see in the name Yosef, Osaf Elikim Eskarpazi, how it was fulfilled in the life of Yosef. Here he was a slave in a pit, or in the house of Potiphar, very shamed existence. And then he was accused of adultery. And Osaf Elikim Eskarpasi. All the shame was cleared. They gave him the master's adopted daughter to make sure that everybody knows that he was cleared and exonerated, otherwise he wouldn't have got Potiphar's adopted daughter. Osaf Elikim Eskarpasi. You look at a name like Yehuda. If you take Yehuda in Moleh, that means you take Yehuda and you spell it Yud, Yud, Vav, Daled, Hey, Hey, Yud, Vav, 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 Daled, Daled, Lamed, Saf, Hey, Hey, Yud. It's exactly B'Gematria Malchus. Exactly. Because Lo Yasser Shevet Yehuda. I mean, you've heard this stuff from me before. You've heard me point out that Yaakov wanted to be Megala the Kates because he saw that in all of the names of the Shvatim there was no Ches and no Tes. So he said, there's no Chet, I could be Megala the Kates. But then he looked at all of the names of the Shvatim and he saw there was no Kuf and no Tzadi either. So I can't give you the Kates. See what goes on in names. So for this shir, I wanted to share with you something. By the way, both Yehuda, Imole, and Malchus is 496. So there's a Paneach Raza. Rabbeinu Ephraim says the same thing, both Rishonim. Kol Eila Shiftei Yisrael Shnayim Aser. All of these, the tribes of Israel, 12. This is really unbelievable. Kol is B'gematria 50. Chaf Lam is 50. Says the Paneach Raza, says Rabbeinu Ephraim, that's because if you count all the letters in the names of the Shvatim, it's 50 letters. 50 Yosefs. So that's Kol Eila. Kol is 50. So you'll say, what's the significance? Nice, 50. So what? 50. Bring 52, there's 52 cards in a deck. Well, 50? What's 50? What's 50? I don't know what's 50. Comes along the Havdil, the Rabbeinu Ephraim, and he says between Pesach and Shavuos is 50 days. 50th day is Torah. And he says if you count the number of times it says the word Torah, in the Torah it says Torah 50 times in the Torah. So the 50 letters in the Shvatim's name is that these are Shiftei Torah. They stand for Torah. And that's why I want to propose, it says, V'chamushim alu b'nei Yisrael me'ametz Mitzrayim. Chamushim is Chamishim, right? That's the 12 Shvatim that came out of Mitzrayim. So it happens to be, sometimes you just notice something. It has to be in the Schus of the Tzibur. It has to be in the Schus of the Tzibur. I noticed this last night. It's the Schus of the Tzibur. I happened to notice it. I'm not smart like this. I'm not gifted like this. I just happened to notice it. It says in the pasuk, Kol Eila Shiftei Yisrael Shnayim Aser. So he said, Kol is 50. You won't believe it. You know, there's something called Mispar Cotton. Mispar Cotton is you don't deal with zeros. Mispar Cotton, like the Gematria of Emes is 9. Aleph is 1. Mem is 4 and Tuf is 4. You don't deal with zeros. Mispar Cotton of Emes is 9. The Mispar Cotton of Sheker is 6. You got to see this. The pasuk says it's really amazing. It says Shiftei Yisrael Shnei Maser. The Mispar Cotton of Shiftei Yisrael Shnei Maser is 50. It's unbelievable. Let's do it together. Just maybe I'm wrong. I checked it many times. Shin is 3. Vez is 2. That's 5. Tes is 9, that's 14. Yud is 1, that's 15. Yud is 1 is 16. Sin is 3, is 19. Reish is 2, is 21. Aleph is 1, is 22. Huh? What? Right, Reish is 2, is 21. Aleph is 1, is 23. Thank you. Lamed is 3, is 26. Shin is 3, is 29. Nun is 5, is 34. Yud is 1, is 35. Mem, I made a mistake here. Let's start again. Made a mistake. Shiftei, Shin is 3, Beis is 2, is 5. Tes is 9, is 14. Yud is 1, is 15. Yud is 1, is 16. Shin is 19. Reish is 2, is 21. Aleph is 1, is 22. I was right. Lamed is 3, is 25. Shin is 3, is 28. Nun is 5, is 33. Yud is 1, is 34. Mem is 4, is 38. Ayin is 7, is 45. Shin is 3, is 48. And Reish is 2, is 50. It's mamish amazing. Mamish amazing. So you'll say, Rabbi, what's so exciting? One of the things that I find exciting is that, remember all the way back when Avram was told by Hashem, Lech lecha. Here you won't have children. Lech, go lecha for yourself. What's the gematria of lecha? 50. Lamed Chaf is 50. Lech lecha, you're going to have 50 descendants. As I was lying down last night, I thought to myself, that's Pshat B'nai Yisrael. B'nai Yisrael is Yud Beis, 12 with Nun. 12 that will have 50 letters. That's B'nai Yisrael. The secrets of the Torah are amazing. So let's go straight. After hearing this, you're interested to hear about Malachim. I know that. Ha-malach ha-goya lo yisi mikol ra, hu yavarech es hanoirim. So here, I know you're getting tired of gematrias. I think this is the last one for the night. The gematria of ha-malach ha-goya lo yisi mikol ra, and I go these over and over and over again. The gematria of ha-malach ha-goya lo yisi mikol ra, the angels that saved me from all evil, is 906. It's exactly Bigematria, the 4 angels that camp around worthy people. Chayne Malach Hashem Soviv L'Yareyav, the Malach Hashem, the angels of Hashem, camp around those that fear Him by Yechaltzeim and strengthen and deliver them. So, HaMalach HaGoyel Oisimi Korah is 906. Michael, Gavriel, Oriel, Raphael is 906. Exactly. You say, Oriel? I never heard of Oriel. Well, guess what? You learn Gemara? Gimel Mem Reish Aleph, that's Gavriel, Michael, Raphael, Oriel. That's what Gemara is. You never knew that. You learn Gemara, it's Kisris B'fnei Piranias, you sit down, you open up a Gemara. Gemara is Gavriel, Michael, Raphael, Oriel. Want to know what else is Gematria 906? Blows you away. Liyamin, Smail, Ponim, Ochar. To the right, left, front, and back is Gematria 906. That's Raphael, Gavriel, Michael, Oriel. Oriel is with a Vav. It's interesting. What I found interesting is these 4 malachim, which we said is Gemara, they all end with a Lamed. Michael, Gavriel, Oriel, and Michael. They all end with a Lamed. Lamed is learning. Lamad. Because we're supposed to learn everything that we learn, we're supposed to learn 4 times. At least 4 times. That's why every time we learn a perek, we say Hadron. We say Hadron 3 times. Hadron Masechtas Bava Kama, Hadron Masechtas Bava Kama, Hadron Masechtas Bava Kama. Say it 3 times. We learned it once, and we want to come. We will return to you 3 times. That's why we have a mitzvah of learning the Parasha Shnayim Mikra Vecha Targum and hearing it in shul. That's 4 times. And that's where the protection comes. Oriel, Gavriel, Michael, Raphael. That's the 4 lamets. 4 times you learn it. You get a lot of protection. Vayares Yosef. He saw Yosef. The angel that redeems me from all evil will bless the children. So all the Rishonim ask an obvious question. The pasuk says Vayavarech es Yosef, and then he goes on to give a bracha to the children. Yavarech es Hanorim, but it says in the beginning Vayavarech Yosef. You know what the answer that the Zohar gives? Zohar asked this question. And the answer that the Zohar gives is that the biggest bracha to a mensch is that the children should be blessed. The biggest bracha to a mensch is that the children should have atzlacha. Now those that know songs, they'll tell you, Yossi Tov, Country Yossi, made a beautiful song about Elon. Tree, oh tree, how shall I bless you? You have everything. I bless you that the fruit that comes from you, trees that come from you, should be the same as you. That's this word from the Zohar. That's the word from the Zohar. The biggest blessing. Unfortunately, it's not an American word. Americans are interested more in themselves. Their children have their own lives. What's in it for me? In the olden days, that's what a woman would pray for when she sinned lich. Not for herself, for her children, Talmidei Chacham. Comes the Sefer Chayvis Al Talmidim, and he brings a sparkling raya to this concept from a Gemara in the beginning, in the first parak of Masechtas Brachos. It's a Gemara on Daf Zayin. The Gemara says over there, it's such a wonderful Gemara. The Gemara says over there that when there was a Kohen Gadol, Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha, Gemara says when he went in to be maktir the Ketores on Yom Kippur Lefnei Lefnim, he saw a vision of a Kasriel Koch, saw a vision of Hashem, and Hashem said, Borcheni, bless me. So what did Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha say? Yiratzon nufanecha me'epiyah will Hashem sheyichpeshu rachamecha eskascha. May your mercy overwhelm your anger. Remember, it was Yom Kippur. V'yagaylu rachamecha al midaisecha, and may your mercy overwhelm all your other attributes. V'tisnagim bonav b'midas harachmim. And you should treat your children with the attribute of mercy. But Hashem asked for a blessing for himself. And Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha Kohen Gadol gave the blessing to Hashem's children. B'nei B'chari Yisrael. Because the biggest bracha to a developed person, not a spoiled American, but the biggest bracha to a developed person is a bracha for children, for their children. And that means that if we're living correctly, one of the things that we should be praying for daily the most, people think what people pray for. They pray for atzlach in business, a promotion, a vacation, a trip. We should pray for atzlacha for our children. V'arevna Hashem Elokeinu es divrei Yisaresecha b'fina v'nihanaknu v'tzetzainu v'tzetzai tzetzainu v'tzetzai kol amcha beis Yisrael. Pray for our children. So I don't want anybody that's going to start writing letters to me. Rabbi Weiss, you didn't say any stories tonight. Enough of gematrias. Give us stories. V'atem chashavtem alay ra. You planned that it should be bad, Yosef said. But now we spoke last week about the idea of a Isa es achurai ufanai lo yero, that you could see the real meaning afterwards, but beforehand you don't know. We don't know why things happen before. Things that we think are bad turn out to be good. Remember, I told you last week the story, for those that weren't here, the story of the Chassam Sofer, of the man who was shipwrecked. And he lands on a desert island, and the boat drifts in with him, and he takes the boat, he's good with his hand, and he constructs a hut. Well, at least he's shielded from the elements, and it starts to rain, and lightning hits the hut, and it goes on fire. And he says, Rabbi Nishon, what are you doing to me? And then 10 minutes later, a big boat comes and saves him because they saw the hut on fire. We don't realize right away why things happen. Only Reisa and Sachura, you see it afterwards. So that's what Yosef said. Atem chashavtem alay ra, you thought it was bad. Alikim chashva l'taiva. This is what happened, what happened to Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva is traveling. He comes to a village, and he needs place to stay. Nobody has place for him to stay. Nobody. There isn't even a park bench. So he goes into the woods. He has a donkey, a rooster, and a fire. So a cat comes and eats his rooster. A lion comes and devours his donkey. And a big wind comes and blows out his candle. And Rabbi Kiva's response was, Kol David Rachmanu L'Tava. That night, a murderous band came, killed everybody in the town. Rabbi Kiva says, if somebody would have room for me, I'd be dead. If I would have had a rooster, they would have heard the rooster crow. The cock-a-doodle-doo. If I had a donkey, they would hear the donkey neigh. If I had a fire, they would have seen the light. People think it's bad. It's really good. So I'm going to tell you two stories about this. Fasten your seatbelts. The first story happened here in Brooklyn. There was a shul in Brooklyn, and it's a woman from Staten Island. This happened before the bridge, I imagine. So this was before my time, I think. Not exactly sure. I never heard of such a story. What happened is a Rav was asked to open a shtibel, reopen the shtibel in Borough Park. And the shtibel was a mess. So he and his wife, with very little funds, did the refurbishment themselves. And the opening date was supposed to be Purim. About a week before, there was a terrible snowstorm, and there was a leak in the roof, and it did damage to the wall opposite the Aron Kodesh, a big eyesore. So the Rav was figuring here, he had a shul in working order, and now this looks terrible. So he thought, and he decided he would get some kind of a hanging to put on it. So he went and he looked. He didn't have a lot of money. And he found in a shop a nice hanging with a Magen David, not standing for anything, a beautiful Magen David crocheted on it. And he bought it, and he was in the process of hanging it in the shul. As he was coming into the shul, there was an old woman standing by the bus stop. It was very cold. And she just missed the bus. So he asked her to come into the shul to be shielded from the elements. Doors were open. There was no yichud. So she came in, and she saw him hanging this thing, and she was mesmerized. He says, what are you looking at? He said, where did you get that? He said, I bought it in a store. It was a remnant. She said, I want you to look in the corner, right there in the corner, and see if it says EBG. He looked, and there was crocheted EBG. She said, that's my initials. I crocheted that 35 years ago in Poland for my husband. I haven't seen him since. So he wanted to give it back to her. She said, no, this is what it is. It's great. It's hanging there. Says, where do you live? At least let me take you home. She lived in Staten Island. So, on Purim, the shul opened, and after the Megillah and everything, there's a man looking and looking and looking at the hanging. He goes over to him, what are you looking at? He says, such a funny thing. My wife Esther made me something like that. And the end of the story was he united husband and wife. And here it is. There was a storm that damaged the shul, which he thought was the worst thing. And that led to reuniting a husband and wife after 35 years. Atem chashaftem l'ra. Give you another story. I said this story once in a completely different vein, and I saw it in a different sefer that time. There's a mice that happened in England. You can't make up such stories. Mice that happened in England. There was a woman in a nursing home. She was very old, and her children visited her every day and called her every day. Anyway, she was there for quite a while, and one day they get a phone call that the mother died. So the Hever Kadisha picks up the urn, and they bury her. They sit shiva. They start sitting shiva. The next day, the first full day of shiva, they get a phone call. The mother is on the phone. What? Why haven't you come to visit? Is everything all right? Talk about spooky. They run down to the nursing home. She is. Ma! So great to see you. So great to see me. Why didn't you come yesterday? They go into the nursing home office. So what's going on over here? What are you talking about? You called her stepmother is dead. She's well. She's in her room. The woman next to her died in the same room. And they mixed up and they called the wrong family. Now they have to call the real family that their mother died and was buried already. I told you can't make this up. So they called up. They said, we have terrible news. Your mother died. Well, she was very sick. But we buried her already. What? And they explained what happened. And the son said, Ma, nitzchuni, you beat me. I said, excuse me? I had a bigger fight with my mother. She was old-fashioned. She wanted to be buried. I told her that's barbaric. She's going to rot. I wanted to cremate her. And we were fighting about it. Hashem made sure that this righteous woman would be buried and not cremated. Can you imagine such a thing? Can you imagine such a thing? So Hashem orchestrated that the wrong family should bury her without problem. Bury her with COVID. Oh, wow. Sorry, I know you would have liked to daven Marv at 11:15. I'm sorry. But now we have to wait till 11:30 anyway. So I'll tell you one more word. Yisachar chamor garam. So we all know that Yisachar is the man of Torah. What we also know is that Leah was not supposed to be with Yaakov that night. But she went out and she said, Sochar secharticha b'dudai b'nei. I got the privilege of having you by giving the mandrakes, the fertile mandrakes, to Rachel. So says the Balaturim, Yisachar chamor garam. Yisachar, his existence was generated by a donkey braying. Because she waited outside, and when she heard Yaakov's donkey braying, she waited, and when she heard Yaakov's donkey braying, she went outside. So the braying of the donkey, Yisachar chamor garam. What does this teach us? It teaches us there's no coincidences in life. Just when Yaakov passed, the donkey brayed? Not a block away? Not a block earlier? Yisachar's existence hinged on a donkey. Now, of course, there's things that help those things happen. We already know that Leah was a great davener. It was a great davener. And Einei Leah Raka, she was missing her eyelashes. She davened so much. Not to fall in the lot of Esav. So here she davened for Yaakov that night. Think it's coincidental that somebody just happened to pass you by that had a great job offer or a good thought of a shidduch? You happen to be in the right place at the right time? Nothing is coincidental. It says, Kol isha shetevas es bala l'dvar mitzvah. If a woman shows a passion for a husband, she'll have remarkable children. That's what happened to Leah. Her anxiousness to listen to a donkey braying caused that she should have the man of Torah. Chamor is also chumrius. Yisachar chamor garim. Chumrius. Because it ain't kemach ain't Torah. The chumrius makes a yisachar. When we were in yeshiva, Rav Moshe made sure that we always were fed well. The dormitory was always well kept. The air conditioning was always good in the base of Medrash. But Chamor is also Oisius Reish Mem Ches. Because Yisach Reish Mem Ches, those are 248 mitzvahs. A man of Torah has to be Chamor Garim. It has to cause to do all the mitzvahs, not just to learn Torah. That's a Chamor Noisei Svarim. That's a different Chamor. That's a glorified Svarmshek. Yisach Chamor Garim. It has to cause Chamor the Reish Mem Ches to do the good, because Gadol HaTalmud, Shatalmud Mevia L'dei Ma'isa. Person comes home from yeshiva but is not a respectful child, or not a good husband, then they're a different type of Chamor. Again, a shout out to help out TorahAnytime.com. And if you would like to help out this year, you could dedicate a share, 718-916-3100, RMMWSI at AOL.com.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.